Shalom Mishpucha, and welcome to Get Organized God's Way. Hi, I'm Eileen Koff, and as a certified professional organizer, my ministry is here to help you discover how to bring order to your spaces. But first and foremost, God is a God of order. And where there is order, there is the peace of God. So these videos are not about the world's concept of tidying up. No, these videos is about transforming your life, fostering deeper relationships, and embracing the peace of God that only comes when our environment reflects His order and peace. So because clutter and disorganization is unique for each individual, I can safely say that you are not alone in your struggles. Disorganization is a worldwide issue. So the bottom line here is that there is no judgment. The world and the enemy of this world has taught us for generations what it's like to be happy and successful. And contrary to those thoughts, God's word says just the opposite. So scripture has so much to say about order. It's my prayer and my ministry to highlight those words so that order and peace become your daily lifestyle. So what is the most important here above everything else? My emphasis in these episodes is that you will learn that order brings about your daily God-given purpose, how your daily life will affect your kingdom eternal purposes. And I have talked about this for many, many sessions. So go back and listen to them. But that's the reason why order and God's presence is so incredibly critical in our life, because without that, we cannot hear Him. And when we cannot hear Him, then we cannot know our purpose. And when we cannot know our purpose, then when we stand before Him, He'll go and say, well, what did you do with the talents and the giftings that I gave you? And my prayer, my heart prayer, is to have Him say, well done, because you lived in an environment that you were able to hear my voice. And peace and order allow that to come so clearly in our lives. So that's my number one focus. So let's bring this to prayer. Thank you, Lord. Father, I'd ask that you would reveal to your servant the words to speak, to unveil the concepts that we have held on to for generations. Holy Spirit, I ask you to speak your words through me so that your kingdom is challenged and is changed for your glory. I pray all this in Yeshua's name. Amen. Well, welcome, Mishpucha, for the second week in February 2025. Okay. And I took this last episode, the one last week, on love, because what better way to celebrate February month, but a love month, right? But the kind of love that God has and the kind of love the world sees is a little bit different. So last week I talked about John 3:16, and I talked about, so God so loved the world that He gave. And my emphasis was on the giving part, because before we give, we must have that understanding of love, of blessings, and how different that becomes in our lives when we have so much clutter, when we have so much dysfunction in our lives, that we are able to give out of our heart with open hands and not clinch fists, because we love first, because that is how God gave Yeshua to us. He first loved us, then he gave. So this month, not this month, this week, I'm going to talk about something that every professional organizer on the face of this earth is called in to help. Number one reason. And that was like, okay, Eileen, what would people love to hear more than anything else? It's about paper. Okay. Now you're probably looking at all of your paper piles on your desk and on your tabletop and in the kitchen table. And I don't know where else, maybe on the nightstand. And you know where they are, right? They're everywhere. And that really is the number one reason we get called in for, to help people get their papers in order. So today I'm going to take the verse. It's called Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. You know this one really well. Trust in the Lord your God with all your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding, but in all ways acknowledge him. And then what he'll do? He will set your paths straight. All right. So I write this in Get Organized God's Way. It's called, there's a whole chapter on paper because I had to do a whole chapter on paper. And it starts like this: papers everywhere, yet there's nowhere to write. Despite our dreams of a paperless society, remember when I was growing up, I was told, excuse me, I was told, one day we won't have paper. We'll have everything electronic. Well, just didn't happen, did it? But so paper remains the biggest source of clutter and disorganization, as I stated before. If clearing off your desk or your kitchen counter feels impossible because you're afraid that you're going to forget important papers, believe me, you are not alone. Many, many, many people struggle with anxiety and discarding newspapers and catalogs and magazines, fearing that they're going to lose something really, really valuable if they do this. So today, give me 1 second here. I'm very excited about today. So my voice is kind of like, okay, Eileen, slow down. Okay, take a breath. All right. So joining me today, and we're going to dive deep into this topic, is a very, very good friend and professional organizer. Her name is Jill Richardson, and her professional organizing company is called Organized Excellence. And believe me, she does everything with excellence. It's perfectly named for her. So we're going to explore God's word and how trusting him can help us manage the paper piles in our home. So together, we're going to dive into the practical, faith-centered strategies to declutter with confidence a life that lives to live a life that reflects our trust in him. So in 2010, in January of 2010, I wrote an article for Proverbs 31 Women. You may have heard of them. They've been around for decades. So this was in 2010, before my first Bible study, Organize His Way, came out. And the reason they asked me to do this is because I was mentoring one of their writers, and she thought that the professional organizing world was incredibly amazing. She had just learned about it, and she wanted to know everything she could. So when she heard this is what I did, she says, Eileen, you got to write for our magazine. And so she says, we got to do something from the lens of a professional organizer in our magazine that is faith-based. And this was sort of like the kickstart of everything that I started doing. And so this is the cover of the article that I wrote January of 2010. Okay. And it's called Like Paper, Like Manna. So you might have heard my testimony, but when I became a professional organizer, I started writing devotions for a group called Faithful Organizers that I found way back in 2007. And I heard the Lord say, Eileen, read the Bible not through your eyes, Eileen, but through a professional organizer's eyes. And one of the first things that jumped out of me was when I was reading in Exodus, and I was reading that scripture to trust in the Lord and lean not unto our understanding. So what I did here was I looked at the concept of paper like manna, okay, and the trust in the Lord. And that's what the Israelites had to do. They had to trust in the Lord every day for the supplies that he would give them when they, were leaving Egypt on their way to Israel. Yeah, it didn't go so great for them. It did, sort of like it doesn't go so great for us sometimes too. But that was sort of like my springboard was writing this chapter and seeing how God was revealing through his word a whole direction that I had never seen before. And so I want to read to you a little bit about, let's see, what do I leave here? Here it is. Excuse me, just one second. I'm a little bit mishpuchat here, a little bit confused here as to where I'm going here. So just one second. Okay. So here it is. So in my study, I write that there are 3 fears that lead to paper clutter. And so I'm going to read to you starting on page 19 of Get Organized God's Way. The whole chapter is called Like Paper, Like Manna, Conquering Paper Clutter Through Trust. Okay, so I say that there are 3 fears that lead to paper clutter. And the first one is decision making. And remember, I've stated this over and over again. I take these words from Barbara Hemphill, who said, clutter is nothing more than postponed decisions. Okay, and that's true. Paper clutter is nothing more than decision-making inabilities. You don't know where to put it. You don't know if it's important. You don't know. It's all of these things. So that's really one of the major reasons that you have these piles of papers, that you just can't make a decision on them. The second one is the general fear of scarcity. And I write here that we fear the thought that we will need this someday, so we keep it all. We keep the IRS returns, the bills, the contracts, the bank statements. I mean, I've seen so much paper on stuff that it isn't needed anymore, and they keep it. Why? Because of fear, bottom line. And the third reason that people have such paper clutter everywhere is called retrieval, okay? They don't know where to put it when they need it, or where they're going to find it when they need it. And so they have no understanding. It's not their fault. They've just not been taught as to where's the best place to put these particular types of papers, and putting them into certain categories and lining them up and doing that kind of stuff. So that's how I started off in Like Paper, Like Manna, is the 3 fears that causes the most paper problems to begin with. Then I write that, okay, so what is the antidote to this fear? I write, it's trust. In Exodus 16, verses 4 and verses 17 through 19, God speaks to Moses. And he says, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. But Moses said to them, no one is to keep anything until morning. No one is to keep it until morning. Okay? So whatever you gathered, you had to use right then and there. Manna was this tiny honey tasting wafer that the Israelites ate that was chock full of minerals and vitamins. What God had asked his children to do was to gather only what they needed for the day. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses, and they kept part of that manna until the next day. And what happened? Okay, let's put this in perspective of paper. Okay, we receive something and we don't know what to do with it. So, okay, we're going to keep it. All right, it's not important for today. It's important for like 5 years from now. Okay, so what happens to all of those paper piles of things that we're not trusting God that He's going to give us what we need when we need it? What happens? It spoils. It spoils just like the manna spoiled, like the maggots that got into the manna. What spoils it is all of that extra paper piles. They spoil our relationships because you can't have dinner in the dining room table because there's papers everywhere. And so what is that doing? That's spoiling the relationships that you should be having with your family at dinner time. There's so many things that it spoils. It's not, and it's mostly it's emotional issues. When we have all of the clutter and all of the disorganization around us. And so the peace of God that surpasses all understanding just isn't in our environment because we don't trust Him to give us what we need every day. Just like the manna, it comes in and it spoils so many areas of our life. And if you're listening to this, I know you're agreeing with me. You understand exactly what I'm saying. So I write here that to think about it, that you think the Israelites who saw God's hand in their deliverance and many miracles escaping the Egyptians would have no problem trusting God, right? To continue to deliver them to the promised land. But we know that trust was not in their hearts. And they continued to harass Moses and complained that their provisions weren't satisfying. Trust didn't come naturally to them, and nor does it come naturally to us. Most of us would rather trust in our own abilities than to seek God for His provisions and direction. However, God's lesson for His children regarding trust was as true then as it is today. So think about paper information like the manna. The sad fact is that paper has a very short shelf life. Ideally, information gathered on paper will end up in the recycling bin when the information is no longer needed. But the reality is that many of us hoard this information because we think, okay, hear this one, I might need this someday. Information is the one perceived power that knowledge brings, okay? It is a power, and we perceive it as such, and we cannot let it go. So that's why we keep it. There is more to paper than just the print. Paper holds vast emotional attachments and personal value. It represents significance. We think, now listen to this one, if I have this piece of paper, then I will have the knowledge. And even if I haven't read it, I can do it someday. So for many of us, the paper piles erode our ability to function. Paper piles begin to creep into our kitchen and our dining room tables, making it impossible to have the family meals, as I stated earlier. If you're missing out on the quality family time because of hurried schedules and our poor paper management systems, eventually the family structure will begin to suffer. And listen to this one. I've been called in for this one too. The paper piles obstruct our hallways, making it a hazard to walk up and down the stairs. And I have witnessed this more times than not in clients' homes who have been rushed to the ER because they tripped and they fell because there was stuff on the stairs, and most of it was paper piles. So simply stated, I write here, paper management problems are a trust in God issue. The Israelites had to trust God to supply their need on a daily basis, and we need to cultivate that same level of trust so that we can begin to let go of those paper piles and clog our ability to function. We need to believe that if we really, really trust God, He will meet our information needs. So here's a tip that I love. And right after this tip, I'm going to bring in my very, very good friend, Jill. This is a tip that comes from Judith Kohlberg. I'm sorry, I had to think for a second. She wrote a book that's called What Every Professional Organizer Needs to Know About Chronic Disorganization. Fabulous book. Okay, highly recommend it. One of the first professional organizer books that was ever written. And I hold this woman with such high regard in her instincts and her understanding of what real, chronic disorganization issues bring. So when a professional organizer comes into your home, when we're dealing with paper, usually it's us that will hold up the piece of paper and say, okay, what does this represent? You tell me what it means. And then they can tell you, okay, when the organizer is not there, say we're doing this virtually and I'm not there, I'm not holding it up, but I'm guiding you on how to do this. You're literally picking up the piece of paper and feeling something in your fingertips, right? God created this sensory concept within our fingertips. That's why we hug people and I've talked about this a lot, why we hug people and we like stroking our pets, and there is this, tactile, input into our emotional areas through our fingertips. Now, paper is crazy with this tactile, what she calls tactile sympathy. Why? No one has taken the science to figure that one out. But we all know that there is something about paper, whether it's magazines or, strict paper or things that come in the mail or whatever. There is this input that goes in through our fingertips right to our heart that says, I'm going to need this. Okay. So what Judith Kohlberg says is how to prevent that tactile sympathy from invading that decision-making skill. She says, wear gloves. Okay, not the mittens kind of stuff, but the things we wore during COVID, the light gloves that just cover our hands really, really easy, and pick them up. So all of a sudden that prevents a barrier right on your fingertips so that when you look at paper, you're not receiving that emotional and sympathetic understanding that the fingertips provide into our hearts and our brains. It works. You can ask anyone that's gone through, any of my clients, and they go, Eileen, this is crazy. I know. I says, I know. But really, I mean, I have a client now that, all right. And she says, Eileen, when I wear the gloves, I can make decisions. I can see things clearly. And my brain begins working in ways it didn't ever work before. And I know, I don't know why. Okay. But it works. So anyway, that's my number one tip for handling paper. Now we're going to hear in a lot of tips from Jill Richardson. So Jill, welcome.
Welcome, Eileen.
Oh, I'm so blessed to have you here.
Oh, I'm blessed to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So I sent you a couple of questions here, or actually you helped me look at some of these questions and say, okay, what do people really want to know about how to manage their paper, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the first one is, well, bottom line, what is paper management?
I truly believe that paper management is the it's the organization and the ability to retrieve paper and be productive in reference to making sure that when you receive paper that you immediately do something with it. It's
Yeah.
the ability to have a productive space in office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Paper management, yeah.
Yeah,
Managing the
I
paper.
love that idea, to have a productive space in
Mhm.
office, right?
Yes.
Because there are so many different ways to divide up these papers.
Mhm.
Do you have a system on how you do that with when you go to a client's, or you're looking at all of their paper piles? Okay, so in order to make a decision, what are those concepts that I have to make a decision on?
Well, when I am working with a client who is overwhelmed with paper, and I have several,
Oh
um,
yeah.
yeah, we all have
That's
several
what we all
clients.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. What I do is, as you just mentioned, I put my gloves on as well, and I open every piece of paper. So I put it on the table or on the floor, and I have them sit with me, and we open. I'll take a letter opener and I'll open every piece of paper that has not been opened, as well as those that have been opened, and I'll open them because it makes it easier, because so many people are afraid of paper, as we can see. They don't like dealing with paper. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so I'll open every piece of paper and give it to them and let them take a second. And I have the categories: shred, file, or put in the box for just going outside, because people, you do have trash for paper. And
Right.
so I'm those three categories. And so there are so many.
Say those
So
again.
the three piles are trash, for going outside on trash day, shred, and file.
Okay.
And so there are so many papers that need to be filed, because we are looking through paper that they haven't looked at in so many years. And so some of the items that they find is mortgage, banking, birth certificates, death certificates, that are just lying here, that are important for the client long term, looking for items that they have no clue of where they are. So those are items that are that we would file.
Okay.
Put in a folder, highlight it, and or name what it is by printing out a label and putting it in a place, in a space where they can know, where they will know where these papers are. The others are shredding. Everyone has a shredder at home, and or they can take them to their local shredder.
Yeah.
There's one in every city where
Yeah.
you can go and have all your documents shredded in this machine.
Right.
And
That's
then the other,
because I've had clients that have had boxes and boxes of things that I had shredding. I don't have the time to do this. You
yeah.
do it, Eileen. I go, no.
Yeah, so you put the box of paper in your car, you take them.
Yeah.
We have a place here called Westchester Shredding,
Oh, good.
Westchester County Shredding. It's right in Valhalla. You drive up, you don't need to get out of the car. You put everything on the right-hand side and or in the trunk. You hit the button, they take it and they throw it away. So all you're actually doing is taking it to the location.
Yeah.
All right. And so they do the shredding. It's just that easy.
That's great.
And it's that important.
So
Because
let me ask you a question. Okay. So when you're talking about, your sections of filing, the different things of filing, do you break down your filing categories?
oh yes, you have to, because you can't put everything in one folder.
Right. All
So
right.
there has to be a
So in
birth
other
certificate.
words, okay. So here is what I have my clients do is breaking. So when they're looking at all of the things,
Mhm.
I have 3 separate filing categories. I
Okay.
have what's called action.
Mhm.
Okay. So so those that are listening. So when you're looking at your papers and you know that you need to file it, you need to keep it, or whatever. The first one would be action. Okay.
Mhm.
And putting all of those things that are needing immediate attention.
Right. I write to do.
There it is. Okay.
Yes.
So you do your to-do action. Okay. And I
Mhm.
call it an action file.
Yes.
I have them get an action file. Well, I can show you show them a little bit right here on my desktop. It's simple like this.
Yes.
Little action file of all
Yes.
the things that they need to do. And I can just keep it right here on my desktop.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they can see, every day, okay, this is important. This I have to get to.
Right.
Okay. Now, the next one that you mentioned, another category in the filing system, I call resource.
Mhm.
Okay, you don't need to get to it right away, but say you have a vacation coming up,
Mhm.
and you want to collect information on that vacation. Well, you're not going to put it in your action file because you're not getting to it right away, but you got to put it somewhere, right?
Right. Yes.
So I create what's called a resource, all these resources that are important to keep. Some of my resources are like past talks or questions that organizers get asked or all of that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
These
Yes.
resources that I can go back to and get to when I need it, but it's not important now.
Right.
Okay. And the other one that you mentioned, the other parts of the things that you mentioned were what I call archival. Okay, you mentioned death certificates. You mentioned birth certificates. What else did you mention?
Marriage license.
Marriage license. Things that you do not need at your desk at all, right? Where do you have them put those things?
I write the description on a folder.
Okay.
Like on a folder, colorful folder.
Okay.
And so what they do is, this says Tuesday's class. And what I would do is just have them put them in it. And then if they have a file folder, a file cabinet, just a small one, you just put them inside of a file jacket, and then you'll know where everything is. You're not really scrambling anymore for things that you need, because we're now going to identify every document that you have with its own name so that you can just go and find it when you need it.
So to piggyback on that, give me a second. I'm going to look something real fast. This is called Product Expo.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Yes. So you see how this is, put it in all these files.
Very useful.
It's not in a file, because you know how big those file cabinets can get really stuffed.
Yes.
So anything that's archival, like all of those things, they can go into like one of these totes.
Something handy, yes.
And you don't even have to put it into the file cabinet. You can put it, like in your closet, way in the back there. You know where it is, but do I need my marriage certificate now? No, I don't need it now.
That's right.
I'll know where it is. It's all together in this cute little, file cabinet. You get it at any office supply store or whatever. And I just love those for the archivals, especially.
And I like those as well, as I get to see yours, because I've been talking about with my family as well, the importance of putting things in something that you can grab in case of an emergency, a fire, whatever. You can grab it and go. And so all these important documents can all be gathered in this one place.
That is so important.
Grab it and run out the door.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is getting more and more critical these days. Is having, what do they call that, an emergency tote or emergency, where you can just grab it and get out, and you don't have to, worry that, your passport or your whatever is, locked.
The important documents, the insurance cards and papers, and it has
you
to
can
be
find
stored.
all of that online as to what goes into those things.
Right.
But I highly, highly encourage everybody that's listening to that to get one of those started in their homes. Thanks for mentioning that. I had totally forgotten about that one.
It's so important, And so because we're buried, so many people are buried in paper that they don't know where anything is, because we're talking about paper management, and not just paper, but, things, their clothes, their jewelry, their bags, that whatever they have, they're not truly valuable to them as they say they are, because they're scattered all over the place. And so many people don't know where things are, working with clients as you and I have, there's so many things we find, and, you just look and go, how could this piece of paper be so important if it's buried in, because people are overwhelmed with paper and life. And so again, we found death certificates, we found mortgage documents, we found life insurance policies, just so many important documents that, the average you and I couldn't wrap our heads around. Why are these documents here? But I'm glad you've called me, because now there is a solution to the problem.
Yeah, and I'm so
That's
blessed
key.
that, we're able to do this so that we can reach so many people,
Mhm.
you know,
It's
because not
important.
everybody is going to be calling up a professional organizer, but a
Mm.
lot of people will, check out a YouTube video and
Well,
and understand, how incredibly important it is that they do these kinds of things. And paper clutter is no different, like you just said, from all other
any
different,
other clutter, yes.
except the decision making. And I always, when I'm with a client, I always say, I don't want to start with paper,
Mm.
because paper, like if you look at paper and it is so thin,
Mhm.
it is so, 500, like a rim of paper, right? Which they have probably 3 or 4 times that, you
Yes.
know, is how each piece of paper is the decision making.
Mhm.
You have to make a decision. And if you spend all your time on paper when there's so much stuff around,
You'll
you
never
gotta
get
look at
through.
the end of the hour or whatever, and you're gonna go, what do we do?
Yeah, yeah,
It's so discouraging.
it
So,
is.
so especially when you're dealing with paper, understand that even though every decision, is you're making a decision on every piece, at the end of the time, you're not going to see a lot of clarity. Even though you've made hundreds of decisions,
Mhm.
understand that.
Right.
So I always say break up the time with
Yes.
paper and objects,
Mhm.
so that there's some sort of motivation for you to continue to want to do this.
Yeah,
Paper is that's why we get called in on paper,
yeah,
because it's so hard for them to
mhm,
see the clarity when they spend hours doing it and they go, why doesn't it look any different?
yeah.
Okay, that's why, because decision making skills is the same thing with paper as it is with objects, except objects take up so much more space.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so another question I had was, how do I bring order to my paper? Did we discuss this already, or do you have
Yes.
something else you want to talk about?
Again, we bring order, I think, for myself, as well as what I share with clients, is that we go to the mailbox every day
Yeah.
or once a month or whenever you go get the paper, because again, paper is overwhelming. I don't want to see it. And a lot of people are, their mailboxes and their, emails are cluttered with.
Yeah, we won't even go into
And
the
so we're
junk
not talking about that,
folder.
but paper, and what I try to do is every day I go get the mail,
Mhm.
chunk, you tear off your name, shred it, that goes in the paper. Important documents, you put in a folder or file, things that you need. Again, it's that same process. Shred, keep, file. I mean, shred, keep, throw out, just regular paper. And when we do that, take the time to do that every day,
Every day.
it will not be, you will not have that desk filled with mail. The steps going in the home is filled with mail because you just dropped it. And the table, as you mentioned in your opening session, is filled with paper. You can't invite people. You can't enjoy the table because you have not made the decision to just put it all in a garbage bag and get rid of it. And I have had clients who have garbage bags filled with paper.
Wow.
They just throw it in the bag. And then we have to go through the bag to go through every piece of paper because again, you have checks in there. There's so many things that comes through the mail and you just decide to get rid of it. So that's the process again. Going through the mail each and every day,
Yeah.
opening it, making the decision. If it's important, if it's shred, or if it's throw away, it's an everyday action. It's just like we decide to eat every day. We don't know what we're going to eat, but
That's true.
but it's still a decision. So we have to make a decision to get rid of paper in the same manner so that we're not overwhelmed with the accumulation of it.
And what I find is the inability to get rid of the paper, is fear. As I stated before in the beginning,
Yeah.
not trusting God to give us what we need on the day to day, but the fear that keeps people, and that's the number one reason for clutter to begin with. Bottom line is fear.
Yes. It's fear. Mhm.
That's the number one reason. And so when people begin understanding
Mhm.
God is not a God, to bring fear into us,
Mhm.
that He's is love,
Mhm.
then our abilities and our decision-making skills on the paper become so much clearer.
Yeah,
So,
and walking in faith, because faith is also the things that we cannot see.
right.
So I can't see the end result of this thing, and so when you're looking at the paper clutter, I can't see how this is going to happen. Working with the client like a week or two ago, like I can't see how we're going to get this done. But if you trust the organizer as well as the process, you will see in the long run that the process truly, truly works. But you have to truly, because he tells us not to look at the things that we can see, but look at the unseen, because those are the things that he's working out for our good. So as we're working it out, you'll see the thing that he's working out for your good, the clarity, the clear closet, the clear paper, everything is gone. You have it a file put away. Those are the things that he's working out. But as you just said, the key is we truly have to trust in the Lord with all our might. We have to stop leaning to our own understanding, but in all our ways, we have to trust him,
That's right.
and allow him to direct our path. And
Yeah,
so, paper is fear and it keeps us stuck from moving forward, which not just paper, but we're talking about paper, but everything in life.
everything. Yeah. But for the, like I said, the number one reason we're called in for
Yes,
is
paper.
paper. So that's why the focus is on that today.
Yes.
So um here's a really, really interesting question that I always get asked is, what do I do with my sentimental?
Ah. The key for me, as I have learned to deal with things that are sensitive, it could be pictures, it could be clothing, it could be whatever it is. I think we have to understand that the belongings are not the person.
Right.
The belongings are not the person. The belongings are the things that the person has held on to, which may have caused them to let go of as well. So here it is, what you now have things that they may have tried to get rid of, but now you're holding on to them. And then you're going to one day pass away, and now someone else is holding on to them because you held on to them. I think it's important that we should remember that the belongings are not the person. And the memory should always be in our hearts and in our minds, not in our surroundings. Maybe keep a cup, a shirt, a pair of slippers, but to hold on to a whole room of stuff is
Mm,
just not acceptable, because we have to understand, as you mentioned, we have to trust, but also we have to understand that this cup this cup is not the person.
no.
This cup is just the cup that the person drank out of. So you want to remember that person through an item, when you only have to remember that person through your experience, through your laughter, through the dinner, the laughter that you've had. Those are the great memories, not the stuff. And it's hard for those who are sentimental on things. Like, we can take
Oh,
pictures of things and keep those things. Every card, 300 cards, I'm keeping all these cards. Tell me why. I can
okay.
just take a picture of a few of them and then discard of them. It's hard.
So I like that concept of, okay, so let's just take a picture of a few of them. So what do we do with the picture? So here's what I
Mhm.
tell my clients, like, okay, what, in fact, I'm working with a client now that has she lives in Virginia, and she moved there from California, and she has a whole storage unit in California that she has to bring over. And it's
Mhm.
none of her stuff, it's, family stuff.
Okay.
Just like what you were saying.
Mhm.
And I said, so when you bring it over, what do you want to keep? And I said, and if you're going to keep it, how are you going to honor and respect what it is that you're going to have? How do you treasure it? And it's
Wow.
just, okay, so it's just like
Mhm.
all right, so you have papers, and the one thing that comes to mind, for more than anything else when I'm dealing with especially moms is artwork, you know, from the kids, you know, all of the paper, all of the stuff that the kids get, you know, brought in from schools, and how it's moundful. It's in the attic or whatever, and to get into mold and must and be
Yeah.
neat. I said, so what good is it doing, right? You know, this is, but it's a piles of paper, right? In that respect, I said,
Yes.
so like I love the idea of taking a picture of it, but there's so many companies now. And I just heard of one the other day, and I can't remember the name of it, but will actually take the pictures and make a spiral bound, um, like,
Photo book for
like
you.
a holder of those pictures. So they kind of like go into a book,
Mm-hmm.
the actual ones. Or what I did when that didn't exist was I framed it. And
Mm-hmm.
I put their, you know, their pictures in their rooms or in the you know, the hallways or the bathrooms or whatever. And so even now today, you know, my youngest one is 33. All right. And when he comes over, he sees his elementary school, you know, pictures, you know, hanging up in the bathrooms or whatever, and he gets the biggest chuckle on his face, you know, when he's, but that's called honoring and respecting what it is you're keeping.
Yes.
Okay, especially in sentimental papers.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, I love how you brought in that concept of taking a picture and actually, you know, paring down what you have and only keeping what's important.
Right.
Yeah, because you can't keep everything.
Well, and it all may be important, but and important to the person who's holding on to it. But as you just said, paring down, take a few.
Yeah.
You don't need a whole room of the
No,
stuff. Because
no,
again, we have to remember that these things are not the person.
no, they're not.
No,
No,
they're
no.
not. And so once we are able to share that information with them and give them the logic of, these were your parents,
Right.
whatever,
So
you
do you
know.
want to honor and respect your parents, or do you just want to throw them in, you know, a
Mhm.
tub and put it in the attic? How do you want to do that? Right?
Or putting in, I'm sorry, end up putting things in a box and having to pay every month for
Yes.
a storage space. And it just doesn't make sense when someone else can use the
No,
item. Yeah, it's
no.
important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Is there anything else about papers that come to your mind that we haven't talked on yet?
Well, we talked about overwhelming, we talked about paper, we talked about the management. Again, I would just emphasize that, going through the papers are vitally important. Like every day, take the time to open the mail as soon as you get it out of the box, as you're walking in the house, as you're going up the stairs. Look and see what it is so you can immediately get rid of it versus letting it sit, because we are so busy each and every day. What is the chance that you're going to get back to that pile that was there from last week, that you're
None.
going to go through it? No, because something else comes up. So I think it's important that we do it daily. As soon as we touch it, start going through it and getting rid of it.
So how can we bring God into their understanding as to what to do with the paper?
Well, again, as you mentioned, as the subject of the getting rid of the paper is, we have to trust him and we have to allow him to lead us. Holy Spirit, lead me, guide me, that I may trust you to show me the way of how to do what it is that I need to do. We just need to trust him a little more so that he can order our steps, because our steps are not always ordered by the Father, they're ordered by our selfishness.
Perfectly put. Yes. Yeah. And I know that well, give me an example of one of your clients at the end of the sessions when they look at the space for the first time.
Okay, well, yesterday I was working with an elderly woman and she hadn't gotten her mail for weeks. And so I went to the mailbox, got her mail, and it's amazing because you open up things, and as we're going through other paper, we brought all this paper together. She found the document And all of my clients, they say this, I was looking for that.
Yes.
It brings me such joy. I actually do a post about that. I was looking for that. And I always said, how can I help you find what you're looking for today? And they're just like, oh my goodness, the joy, the pressure that was off of her shoulders, knowing that, I have to hire someone to help me get rid of all of this paper. It brought her such joy and relief.
That's true. Yes.
Now I can dance throughout my place because I'm now free from all of this, because it holds you down. Like you're captive of the clutter. It holds you in bondage. And
Yeah.
until you want to allow God to free you from that bondage, because he says, who the Son has set free is free indeed. If you want to indeed be free, not only do you need to receive him, but you have to allow him to order your steps and show you the way,
Yes.
so that you can be free of all these things that have held us down in bondage. As you mentioned, the Israelites, they wandered in the wilderness for years when it truly possibly may have only taken a week. They wandered for 40 years because they didn't trust in the Lord. The manna, he gave them manna, he gave them a rock for the water, and they still just were full of unbelief,
And it's the same with us.
It's the
same
same
with
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I was working with a woman this past month, and she had paper all over her floors. She was renting out a 1-bedroom in a home.
Mhm.
And she said, Eileen, when I started clearing off the floor, with the papers and getting them off the floor, so that when I was walking, I didn't stepping on here and there. I mean, so the bottom line here, as I always state in these episodes, is that there's no judgment. I mean,
No.
everybody has these issues, everyone.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so she goes, Eileen, as I was picking them up, and as I was seeing the dust, and as I was seeing all the things that, should not have even been there, health wise,
Yes.
this is her bedroom. This is where she's sleeping. This is, she said, Eileen, each piece represented that concept of letting go,
Wow.
to trust God more and more and more and more. She goes, and now there is nothing on my floor. It's vacuumed. I'm sleeping better. And she says,
What a blessing.
you just don't know. Like you said, every day you have to change your mindset, change the way you've been taught, and think of, what does God say about trusting in him to give you what you need on the day-to-day.
Because he surely will give us what we need.
He will always give us what we need. And when we I sort of like put it to the test, like, okay, God, I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, so when I need this, let's see what happens. Never fails.
Never.
Never. It's fun. It's a fun way of kind of doing it. So
showing himself.
Everybody may be rolling their eyes. I'm going, no, I mean, that's a little stretchy, but no, it really does work. It really is amazing. So,
Really.
it's just like those things on the fingertips,
Yes.
Like if you're not holding it up, then they can make it. If you're holding it up, they can make a decision. But if they touch it, forget it.
Right.
They have to have that barrier, so that they do not, have that input. It's crazy, but it really works.
It really does. Yes.
It does. So anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
I would like to say to the audience, thank you for trusting Eileen and I to give you our professional perspective on the key to getting rid of your paper clutter. Because as professionals, we truly do want to help, and it's our heart's desire to help you to get rid of your clutter. No matter if it's paper or clothes or whatever it is, trust that we will help you because we are truly guided by God, and He guides us so that we can guide you.
Yeah. So how do they get in touch with you, Jill?
Please organize excellence. And I can be reached at organizedexcel@gmail.com and or organizedexcellence.com. And you may reach me at 914-363-0280. And I look forward to hearing from you. Consultation is good. We can just, we can get started. You can call, I can help answer some of your questions. And again, thank you, Eileen, for having me.
Blessing.
And thank you that we can come together as one to share the good news about getting rid of paper.
Thank you so much, Jill. What a blessing it is to have you.
You're a blessing. Thank you.
Bye. Well, before we wrap up today, I just want to take a moment to thank you for joining me and Jill. It's been an honor to share this time with you. And if today's message was a source of encouragement, I invite you to visit my website. You can see it at the bottom, eileenkaufministries.com, where you can download a complimentary chapter of Get Organized God's Way. Or you can schedule a one-on-one session with me at that, and you can see how to do that there. And additionally, I'd like for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which this will be on in a couple of weeks. And you'll find weekly insights on guidance on how to keep that progress going on the day-to-day. So let's remember, more than anything else, that organizing is not solely about creating order. It's about making space for what is truly meaningful in your life. I leave you with God's shalom. And until we meet again, may you continue to bring God's order into every aspect of your life. Shalom, mishpacha. If you missed today's show or want to watch it again, or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all the other live Lamb show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network. We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lambnetwork.tv website. I'm Eileen Koff, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.